live show number 270. As you can see, we have quite the panel of fun people today. Some I'll introduce, and then those that will be introduced by. With us today is our special co-host, Mr. Peter Russell. Peter Russell is the, hold on, I have it all listed out here, just to make sure I get it right, Operations Director. I know I got that wrong at one point, but the Operations Director of Russell Partnership Technology, and of course, he'll be a great link to tell you what all the details are about that. Near and dear to my heart, dearest of my friends, Fran Brasso, who has put up with me for probably more years than she wants to count, but she's as much family to me. We are traveling buddies of many a city and many a, yes, we've been around lots of places, but Fran is, for those who may not know her, which would be very rare if you're in the hospitality industry, if you don't already know Fran. Fran is the previous Executive Vice President of HSMAI, as well as the President of the Foundation for HSMAI. Fran is now consulting with Russell Technology on not just this project, but lots of other things. And thank God she's bringing her wisdom and her experience to the industry beyond what the scope was that she had before. So it is a pleasure to think that Fran is now broadening her engagements. With us also, Adele.
Talk today. I mean, you keep introducing. We're going to talk today about hotel forecasting. Who thought I would be talking about hotel forecasting?
Right.
You can always learn. You're never too old.
Also with us is Adele Gutman, who has her own company of Aspire Reputation Marketing. See, for anybody that knows me already, they know that my names and titles are challenging at best for me. I call everybody Bob and Bill for at least a year. Also with us is Dean Schmidt, who also has his company of Basecamp Meta and MetaSearch Marketing, which, if you haven't guessed, is about MetaSearch. Okay. You got him. And Ben Henley, who is one of the co-founder, great co-founder would be the better way to say, co-founder, CEO, King Potentate, Brainiac, Thinkmaster, whatever. Anyway, 3 and 6 Marketing, based somewhere in a small island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
Previous center of the known world. GMT, I think.
And if be so kind as to ask Peter to introduce David for us, since you have much more of a familiarity with all the details of David's acumen than I do. So, Peter, if you'd be so kind as to introduce David, that'd be great, and we can just kind of jump off from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And last but not least, let me introduce David Boud, who is founder and CEO of Salt Hotels, previously of many other hotel groups, hotel operator extraordinaire. Fran, anything to add on David, seeing as you've known David even longer than I have now?
No, so we'll reveal why David is so important to this conversation today in just a moment. But David, welcome very much, and we're delighted to have you and your experience in operating hotels with us on any project we involved in.
Great, thank you. Great to be here, and nice to meet everybody.
Nice to meet you too, David. So, Peter, the secrets to the universe, the cosmic realities, the understanding of things as we know it, and the explanation of the universe with 2 examples would be great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, with that kind of introduction, and I feel like I can only disappoint, but I'll do my best. Thank you for the great introduction, and you got my job title bang on, so that's fantastic. Just to give a little bit of background, as Lauren said, so I lead a company called Russell Partnership Technology. We focus on a whole variety of things in terms of technology and consultancy within the hospitality industry. That ranges across a whole range of things. And one of the reasons why Lauren asked both Fran and myself to join today was because we actually invited Lauren to join us on a project where we are working on something called the Hotel Forecast Toolkit. And this is something Fran and I started discussing quite early on in the COVID pandemic, where we recognized the real need for people to have better tools and facility to do forecasting, because things are ever changing. The landscape of hotels obviously is very tough right now, and forecasting is tough at the best of times. And we wanted to bring together thoughts, knowledge across a whole range of things, and that's why we brought Lauren into this conversation. That's why we brought David in, and another member of our team, Bjorn Hansen, who unfortunately couldn't join today. So that's kind of the starting point. Fran, anything to add in terms of how we got started with all of that?
No, I think the only thing to add is as we talk today, you'll see what we wanted to do was help the industry, and what we knew is we knew some things, but not all things. So we looked at who we could invite to help us with what we developed on a forecasting tool, which we thought would be needed to help in this time. And the two people who came to the top of the list both said yes, they would help, and that was David Boud and Dr. Bjorn Hansen. So I'm sorry Bjorn can't join us today. He's brilliant. If you know him, you know how brilliant he is, and he is the former founder of the hospitality division of PwC, and still working. He was the dean of the School of Hospitality at NYU. Tisch Center, and now he heads the about 135 hotel groups inside Summit Hospitality, as well as he works on the Pierre Hotel and all of their benefits and programs. So he said he's going to retire 3 times and hasn't done it yet. But David, your expertise and everything that you brought to this project is greatly valued. So Peter, I'm sorry, I went on, so I'll quiet back and you go.
No, that's great. Yeah, I mean, just to get things started, I mean, obviously, I wanted to tell a little bit about what the project is, and then it'd be wonderful to open this out into a bit of a wider conversation about forecasting and obviously the general feeling within the hotel industry at the moment. And just to be clear from the outset, we're not here to deliver a sales pitch, and that's not really why we created the program. The idea was born out of the desire that Fran and I were discussing to help the industry. And this program is not something specific to COVID. This is something in terms of general assistance program. People get into hospitality because they are good and they like hospitality. People don't get into hospitality because they're necessarily good with numbers. And that is not a dispersion on anyone within hospitality, because obviously there are many wonderful people who, far better than myself, understand the numbers and forecasting. So the real reason for creating the program was that, especially right now, people are forecasting sometimes daily, weekly. These things are changing so rapidly because we don't know how the markets are going to change in terms of occupancy, in terms of costing models, in terms of revenue models. So what we created was something which allows people to put together a 2-year forecast in as little as 20 minutes. And that means that people can be putting together a forecast, they can run multiple scenarios, and then they can plan effectively. And by the outcome from that, what I mean is that it's a very simple input mechanism. So we don't need to have extensive knowledge of forecasting. We forecast our occupancies, our costs, and then the system will produce 2 years worth of detailed profit and loss and cash flow reports. And what that then means is that people can see where the issues are. So it may be that our cash flow is great for the next 6 months, or at least manageable, but it could be that in 6 months we've got a real problem on the horizon, and we need to know about that. So that's where this came from in terms of that. That's how we came up with the idea. We, as Fran said, we brought a great team in to support us, and we launched it this time last week, or at the start of this week. So excellent timing in terms of Lauren being able to invite us to come in on this and have a bit of a wider discussion about a little bit maybe about the program and a bit more about the difficulties and trials and tribulations of forecasting. So I guess, David, it'd be interesting to hear from your side. How are things for you and your group of hotels in terms of forecasting at the moment?
I mean, that's the $1 million question right now. Is everything is in constant change, and whether that is from a business level for rooms or an occupancy level for food and beverage outlets, and by state, the guidelines are changing weekly right now, and we're all seeing what's happening and have been throughout the year. And so there's no time more than now, I think, that forecasting has been critical. And how often we are having to forecast, how often we are having to review our staffing models, our costs. I've been playing with the forecasting tool along with my finance team, and the ability to do this so quickly has been the key. You can spend a whole day forecasting and you've got to do another one in another 2 days. And so, we're all trying to run a business at the same time. So for me, forecasting is critical. The next 6 months are really unknown. And so, it's a major focus of for me and for my senior team.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I think sounds like it's a bit of a cliche, but I think it's the classic case of if you fail to plan, then you should plan to fail. And a lot of, it's very easy almost in some ways to sort of, I don't want to say hope for the best because I'm not suggesting that's what anyone is doing, but I think it's just so important to be aware of what's happening. And like you say, the goalposts are moving so much at the moment that, we need to be able to plan accurately as we can, but we also need to be ready to adapt quickly. And as you say, operators are out there and you're having to deal with the day job at the same time. So I think that's the difficulty in terms of having to do that. And it's also that case of who are you going to present this to? You're going to have to share this information with potentially owners, potentially lenders, senior leaders, whoever that might be. And I think a lot of people from our experience, and I know Fran had the same in terms of a lot of people feel somewhat comfortable, but then maybe they don't feel that what they're producing is professional enough as well. Invariably, it probably is, but again, it probably takes, as you were saying, David, a really long time to do it. It could take you a day, 2 days to do it. So that's why we were keen to put this together to help people do that in a shorter period of time, to make sure that people could be focusing on the other areas. I remember Fran saying, all these hotel operators it's more important for them to be thinking, well, how can we keep people safe during these times of COVID? How can we still be delivering great hospitality? We don't want to be stuck in the back office spending 3 days forecasting only to have to tear it up and redo it again 3 days later. So it's a difficult time, clearly. I don't know, does anyone else have any thoughts? Dean, Adele, Ben, in terms of forecasting?
I was wondering.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could give us a rundown of the factors that are going into that equation. Is it just, obviously it can't just be historical these days. Are you taking into account what's trending in the area or flights or anything outside the hotel?
Sure thing. I mean, the key thing to say is that the key decisions need to be made still by the person who's building it. This is, there still has to be a decision made there. And this is all built on looking towards the future. And I think, this came through in terms of the instruction at the start. We can't be looking at the past. We can't be looking at previous models. We can't be looking at previous years. In previous years, we would have looked at occupancy, we would have looked at pickup, and we would have forecasted based on those numbers. We almost have to start from a blank page right now. And I think, again, that is one of the difficult things that people are struggling with. So in terms of that, in terms of the main inputs, that's again, one of the reasons why we felt we could deliver something here, which would be so valuable in terms of breaking it down into again, I don't like the word simple, but in terms of those core areas that people understand and can think about really vividly and quite quickly. So the core inputs are we're going to be forecasting our occupancy. We're going to be forecasting our average rates. We're going to be forecasting any other revenue in terms of rooms. We're going to forecast costs. But on the cost side, we're going to be doing it in terms of cost percentages. So in terms of cost of sales, percentage staff cost. So we're trying to keep it at the high level in terms of that information. So we're not going into a line by line forecast because that's the thing that's going to take you a long time. So yes, we need to have some idea about what our cost percentages are, but again, we can play with those. And again, we'll have a good idea what those numbers are because we're operating. So we will know how things situate at the moment. And again, we are providing further assistance to help people forecast that. The same is true within food and beverage in terms of, forecasting covers, forecasting average meal, average beverage prices, again, forecasting costs, again, in those percentage formats. And there's not too much more after that. We do have the added complexity of being able to add in things like loans, different periods of payback or creditors and debtors and things like that. But people can really make it as simple or as complex as they want. So again, just to give you a bit of background, this is not something brand new to us. This is something we've done as a company for the best part of 20, 30 years. We would normally deliver this in a bespoke way with clients as part of a consultancy project where we would work with an individual client and we would forecast with them to a very, very detailed level. Now, of course, we'd love to do that with absolutely everyone who needs it. But in reality, everybody wouldn't have the time, everyone wouldn't have the resource to do it to that level. So what we wanted to do was to create a model which allowed us to share this to help more people. So that's the kind of heart in terms of what would be the inputs and what would be the outputs.
Does it require a interface with the PMS?
No, absolutely not. And again, one of the big things we heard, and be interesting to hear, and then this is one of the things that David mentioned during our early phase of the conversation as well, was people want this in the formats they're used to using. They want this to be in a format where they can play with the numbers. So in terms of being able to use this within Excel, being able to run the model in that way. So, making it making it sure that the learning curve to use it is really short at the start. Because if this is too complicated, someone's going to sit down and go, I haven't got the time to learn how to use this, so it's not very useful. The point of this is that someone will be up and running, and to be honest, they will have a forecast built within the first hour of sitting down to use it. Obviously, then they can refine, they can adapt, they can build it, and that's where they would go in terms of that.
So if I can add, sorry, Adele, during the development of it, Peter spent weeks developing this powerful Excel spreadsheet. And when we showed it to David and Bjorn Hansen, well, they're not the same last name, David Bowden and Bjorn Hansen. What Bjorn said is, Peter was he was like so happy to show it. He'd worked so hard on it. And what Bjorn said, you know what, this is fantastic, Peter, but too much data is being required to be input. He said, you've got to do something that allows a minimum of input that will spread across 2 years without too much time being spent. And can you get that done for us? And Peter said, let me get back to you on that. But the answer is he did. So that's, Bjorn was looking at it with an eye of what would it take for an operator to use it and how fast could it be done? And that's what Peter was able to come together with David and Bjorn and myself to make available. So that's what you'll see when you go into hotelforecast.com now. You'll see an Excel spreadsheet, which you can review. Peter will take you through it, and then you can download it for use at your property and input your own personalized numbers.
Absolutely, yeah. And I have to give credit to Neil, who is our finance director here, who helped me build it in terms of the mechanics and helped me, in terms of especially the P&L and the cash flow elements within that. So it's definitely a joint effort. So I'm definitely not taking all the credit. And of course, our collective team, our design team and creative team as well. Yeah, because Fran's very right. When we first built it, there was a lot of data entry involved. You had to get very involved and probably enter something close to 250, 300 numbers in order to get started. Whereas we condensed that down enormously in terms of that numbers now. So you're talking more like entry of sort of 50 numbers in terms of getting started, in terms of those inputs, and also just that streamlining of the process to make sure that people almost wouldn't realize they're doing it in terms of, it's not too onerous in terms of the requirements that people need to do. And that was the core target. And it was really good to have that pushback because I felt very proud of the first version. And as Fran said, when I had that comment, I sort of finished the call, took a big deep breath. I think it was an evening because obviously well, not obviously, but I'm based in London. Fran, David and Bjorn are all based in the US. So we tend to talk at the end of my day and the middle of their day. So I probably did pour myself a gin and tonic, sat down, worked out how the hell I was going to make it happen, and then got started. And then that's where we went. So, yeah.
Do you feel like you've lost any accuracy or anything in making it more concise?
I would say not. I mean, I think the key with this is it's as powerful as the numbers that people put in, and that's not me shirking and saying that it's that case. But what we've built is the toolkit and the heart that people need to do this. So if people put in the right numbers, then the accuracy is going to be there. So and I don't mean that in terms of trying to push away that, but obviously we aren't involved in terms of putting the numbers in. We've tested and validated this with example scenarios and tested it based on previous use cases that we've done, and we know that it's legitimate in terms of giving those accuracy numbers. Yeah.
But you're asking the hotelier to put in the occupancy, right? So, I mean, this is a big concern for hoteliers. you know, we can't divine when borders will open or when, you know, the quarantine situation will change. We can't see what's going to happen in terms of spikes or anything. So what advice do you give a new hotelier who's just gone and downloaded the tool from Hotel Forecast? How would you approach making those decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's similar to, you know, like David mentioned before, that's the $1,000,000 question. And, you know, the key thing is that we got to start somewhere, because if we don't forecast something, then we're going to be even more in the dark than we would have been without this. The other key thing is to say that the operators on the ground within the properties are going to be the best people to do it, because if we tried to come up with some kind of algorithm or some kind of prediction model that said this is what we think is going to happen, if anything, it would be less accurate. And forecasting is always, you know, it's a science and it's an art. There are two parts to this. So forecasting is always something which is going to be difficult, and that's why hotels will have, you know, GMs, revenue leaders, a whole host of people who are very good at doing that and understanding of it. My key initial suggestion on that is that during these COVID times, there's two things we need to be thinking about. First one is get a forecast together, get started with something, see what it looks like, and then to start to see how that comes into play. So get started and then start to slot in the actuals. So forecast a week and see how close you are, and then continue to do that. The other thing we're suggesting with the forecast toolkit here is that people build this 2-year forecast, but as we said, this is going to change. So you can then start to slot in your actuals as we go along, and then that will further inform the process as we go through. The other key thing, and this is not to sound pessimistic, but the key thing is to forecast based on not a worst case scenario necessarily, but to forecast what you think is realistic. Don't shoot for that thing which is too optimistic, otherwise you're invariably never going to hit it. Because the forecast toolkit here is to try and allow you to see where you're going to have issues. And if you forecast the future as being too good, you're not going to see those issues coming. So we almost need to look at this, not with the rose-tinted glasses, but we need to have a very harsh reality look on it. That would be my advice in terms of this.
Peter, may I introduce Mr.
Great,
Trevor? By the way, Peter and David, and you guys need to come more often. Ben has been on his absolute best British behavior today. You know, he's polite, he hasn't done his normal typical, you know.
I'm making notes, Lauren, okay? When a fellow Brit talks, you make notes, because you know they're talking sense. I was going to say, Peter, great Brits think alike. I've just written down, forecast should be realistic, not hopeful, because hopeful isn't a strategy. We sort of started joking on the show the first couple of times I turned up, that in terms of the hotel world, time began in March 2020. There was nothing before that, because it doesn't matter what happened, and it was obviously framed by forecasting. A couple of my questions on this, if you don't mind, how is the model going to account for the ever-changing landscape of government subsidies? For example, in the UK today, Rishi Sunak, Chancellor of the Exchequer, came out and said, "Oh, we're going to pay this much for these people in this area on this local lockdown, and we've got a super simple traffic light system. So local lockdown plus traffic light system plus current infection rate, and we're going to pay X% of this amount of hours." Crystal clear, guys. Crystal clear. How does the model, Peter, account for those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, great question, and it's perfect timing. Yeah, Rishi announced this perfectly ahead of our session today, which is great. Very thankfully, he did phone me last night to give me a little bit of pre-warning. I wish, but yeah, as Ben says, ever-changing and country by country, this is different. And as you were saying earlier, Lauren, you know, state by state in the US as well, so even more complex. So I mean, yeah, the key thing here is because it's changing so much, that again just further kind of leads into the reason why this is such a useful tool. And let's take that staff cost as a key example. What we've done is we've built in the ability to keep it essentially really simple within the toolkit. So when you are forecasting, you simply are saying, this is our staff cost. So underneath that, there is going to be some work to say, well, what is our staff cost? And you actually perfectly led me into one of the things which we're adding in, because we've already had feedback that is going to be something which is going to be almost its own toolkit within a toolkit in terms of forecasting, well, what is our staff cost? Because again, you might, in previous times, you would have known, well, our staff cost is X percentage of revenue, for example. That's, you'd ask a hotelier that 2 years ago, they could have told you what that number is. They would know. Whereas now, that's going to be quite difficult because not only have we got different models in terms of potentially numbers of staff, ways of working, the days of the week people are working, the hours of people are working, and then now, like as you mentioned, we've got government support packages and all these other things. So one of the things we're adding in is a secondary forecasting element, which allows people to forecast what that staff cost is going to be, because that is going to be so important. And it's going to keep changing. Unfortunately, this is not me being doom and gloom, but unfortunately, this is not a short-term thing. This is going to be a long-term recovery. I'm sure we're all keeping track on the numbers in terms of these forecasts other people are coming out within the industry to say, well, when are we going to return back to 2019 levels of occupancy? The latest figure I've seen says that we'll be there by 2023. And that feels like a very long way away for me. And I'm about
But I think part of that's affected because you're looking at all sectors of travel. I think if you narrow that out, it's different timelines depending on what type of property you are and who your traveler is. Because I think when you're looking at big box convention and group dependent hotels, meaning you're not going to hit your numbers unless you have compression in market due to convention and stuff. Yeah, I don't think 2023 sounds too far off. But when you're talking about leisure resorts in nature destinations, I think you're going to see them next year potentially get back to where they were. I think when you look at it as an industry-wide vertical, yeah, that number is heavily sapped by the bigger box part of this of this industry.
Mm-hmm. Fully agree. Yeah, and absolutely. Again, it shows that there's going to be so many differences across the industry. Region by region, hotel type by hotel type, brand by brand, big brand versus small brand. There's going to be so many differences with that, and they will all be forecasting in different ways. And because as we saw in the early days after we sort of were coming out of the initial stages of COVID, as you mentioned, those kind of nature, more coastal regions, they were actually seeing boom times. They were saying, well, we're busier than ever. But then if you take markets like New York or London, they are quieter than ever. They are seeing huge drops. So, this is specific, that's why this has to be done at the property level. Because property by property, this is going to be different. So yeah, fully agree on that. Absolutely.
Are you supporting the ability for properties to build contingency-based forecasts? Because there are certain elements that we did learn this year that is meaningful, like what happens when one of your key source markets labels you as a hotspot and puts a limitation in on you. We actually do now have measurement of the impact that has on your demand. Mm-hmm. So are you helping create these contingencies? Like I think about like Myrtle Beach, their year kicks off with business from Canada every year. Well, the Canadian border is currently closed. So if that doesn't open by January, they already know what the impact of that's going to be. But if it does open, it changes the reality of next year. So are you layering in anything like that for them to have like contingency based forecasts?
Yeah, you picked up on one of the core reasons. Yeah, absolutely. Because what we're suggesting is that people shouldn't just be building one forecast. We should be building multiple forecasts. And as we said, building one forecast can take a hell of a long time. So if we're building 7 or 8 different contingency models, that's going to take maybe not 7 or 8 times because we built some of it and some of it may not change, but either way, it's going to take us a lot more time. So yeah, that is exactly what we're suggesting here. That's another reason why we've built this to allow people to condense that process to do that. So we would exactly be saying, build what you think is happening based on today. Build what you think would happen if the border closes. Build what would happen if you had to, decrease staff numbers by 50% because you're not allowed to have so many people on property. Build in what would happen if operating costs went up by 20% because you have to spend more money on cleaning and sanitization and these things. build these layers into that scenario planning so you know what happens after each one. And then when and if they happen, you obviously still have to kind of deal with it, but you can pull out your forecast and go, right, well, we're prepared for this. This is what we would do in this scenario. So now we very quickly go to this plan. It's in my previous life, I used to work as an event manager for a conference organization company. We used to build what I used to call escape routes. So if something went wrong for the event, this is what we would go to. I'm also a huge football fan, and by football I mean American football. And
Ben is not aware of what that is.
You think of this in terms of
it's like rugby, but for softness.
David might know.
You think of this in terms of play calling. You tend to start a game potentially with your first 10 drives mapped out, but if that doesn't go to plan, you have. I'm talking to the Americans, Ben. I'm sorry. You have your go-to plans. If they're shutting down the run, then you go to your second option. You have it ready. You're not surprised by it, and if you're surprised by it, inevitably you're not going to be prepared for it. It's the same with soccer. If you're not, I'm sorry, Ben. I know that's a dirty word here in the UK.
You need to hand your passport in, Peter.
No, it's the same. It's the same thing. I'm going too far into sport, but the point is, you will have those scenarios ready to go, so that when and if they happen, you're prepared for them, and you've already thought about what you will do, and you'll already be able to quickly identify the gaps you have and the ways that you're going to deal with them, rather than being shocked by them.
That's a really good analogy, and I like that, because one of the things that I almost hate about talking about forecasts is the fact that your forecasts are probably going to be wrong, especially right now. And just come to terms with that and deal with it. That doesn't mean you don't have one, right? Just like you said earlier, failure to plan is planning to fail, right? You still have to have one, but you got to figure out how you're going to adapt, how you're going to be agile and adjust to things that happen in real time.
Yeah.
So let's ask David, because I know David won't be with us for the entire show. David, what are you doing on property? You've got property in different locations. So what are you doing?
Well, I think, and I wanted to add something to the conversation there as well, is we're opening a new hotel in April of next year. And so we're now also in a position where we're putting a forecast together for a property that has no history. And what's been really interesting about this tool is we've been able to run multiple scenarios. So we have 6 different scenarios that we have used the tool for, which allow us, that we're not having to spend a ridiculous amount of time doing. So I hope you can hear me. I'm having some internet challenges here as well, but hopefully you can still hear me.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
good.
Oh yeah.
Okay, good. So, okay, great. So that's sort of one of the things that this tool has been really useful to us, is in a new property where we have no idea of what's going to happen, using all of these different scenarios and building it that way. So we can flip something to what Peter was just saying. We're able to flip between the different scenarios as we get closer to the hotel opening. But I think to all of the points that have been raised, our hotels are all in very different markets and with very different restrictions. So New Jersey's dining restrictions are very different to Massachusetts' dining restrictions, which are different again to New York. And so, what we're doing is we're using all of the data that we possibly can to be able to provide, putting into the forecast tool to be able to provide us the best case scenarios that we can see from a forecasting point of view. But I think also that we now have 6 months of data through COVID. We have April through September, which, is only half a year, but, it's a lot more data than when we started this discussion and building this tool. We had no data at all. We've now got some data. We're now seeing, we're following a lot of the information that we have from China, seeing how their tourism recovery, what the flow has been, and using the same thing here. So I think it's using past data. There's got to be some guesswork, some strategy, and multiple assumptions. And every time an assumption changes, it's like, okay, we're going back into lockdown, or indoor dining is not going to happen. We're going into colder months. Being able to put that data into the forecast and reforecast quite quickly. And, one of the things that
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Is critical, but the cash flow is critical right now.
Yeah, I think what David was saying there was how critical cash flow is, because and again, I don't want to bring out all the cliches today, but cash is king, and if we don't manage the cash flow, then we don't have a business. So maybe that's what David said. It was just cutting out there a second, David. So sorry to cut in if that's exactly what you were saying.
One other suggestion I've had for any partners I've talked to.
That's exactly what I was saying.
We're so well aligned, you see.
Was to actually go back through your analytics and study your different geos that showed up when other geos locked down, and start mapping out who did all of a sudden become a source market of meaningfulness. And we saw this in some really interesting ways where we saw Miami as a source market show up in regions where normally you would not see Miami as a meaningful market. And one of the things we've encouraged is go study that and build these contingency plans that if New York locks down or New York puts a mandatory quarantine on people from your area, pay attention to what other regions showed up and delivered, because they also can't go to New York. So they're now choosing somewhere else, and build strategies based on when pieces of the map go dark for you. Where do you go next? Because it's not just about surviving, it's about getting through it as well as possible. And the way you do that is to find what customers can travel and will travel to you when options are eliminated for them the same way options have been eliminated for you.
Yeah, and I think it's key to say that this is not forecasting in isolation. I think one of the key things is that this forecasting toolkit needs to be integrated with your wider revenue management, sales, distribution, marketing, like I said, identification of those source markets, because all of that is feeding into this. This is not sort of, this is the silver bullet to success in terms of, now that we've got a great forecasting tool, we're saved. This is great. We know what's happening. We know where we're going. This is one element of the bigger strategy of all the other parts of that need to filled in to bring the success. And that, I agree. And it's the same wherever we are, like I say, in terms of where you are in the States. Yeah, it's a state by state thing. We've got the same thing here in Europe. We keep getting updated lists. You can travel here. You can't travel there. The same in Asia Pacific. So absolutely, yeah, it needs to continue to be informed by this changing landscape.
For right now, usually October in the world of hospitality, it's the tail end of the budget season. And more often than not, everybody I'm talking to, they're not even beginning the process because they're still in the shell shock phase of, as soon as we think of something, it's not the same as what we thought. And the worst question, the biggest question to answer during budget process is why. The kiss of death to any budget proposal is not being able to answer that question. And to the scenario aspect of it, the easiest way to deflate any budget or any forecast is to say, well, if I took this little piece out of your puzzle, does the cards, still stand? And oftentimes it doesn't, because nobody's planned for that in a mathematical way. That can happen, but we don't know what we do if that. Well, you're answering that question to a degree. You're saying, well, we've thought of that, and this is what we think the mathematical impact is towards it. Because for a longest time, 6 months maybe, we've just been watching the bombs drop. We've just been watching one thing after another affect our industry, decimated, and we've been harboring whatever resources we have financially, cash flow, whatever. And now looking towards trying to know what our businesses are going to do in the future tense, there has to be some stick in the sand that says, if this is this, like when you went to economics class in college, if all things were consistent, we could look at this one thing. Well, not all things are consistent, so you can't just look at this one thing. You have to plan for the variables that hit it. I think Ben, when he was in his lotus position yoga mat, said once that business was like water. It came from different directions. It just had to depend on how it flowed or something like that. I don't know. You were very much in the Zen mode when you said that. I don't know.
I think just to pick up on that point there about budgets for next year, there's some clients we're working with that still haven't got them, still haven't sat down to them. And there's a few reasons there. First of all, I don't think everybody knows whether or not they're going to be around next year. Secondly, it's going to be difficult for a forecaster to sit down whilst they're spinning so many other plates. They're going to be fulfilling other roles on property as well and at a business level. And thirdly, it's a pretty shitty task. and it's going to get put off and put off and put off. People are going to procrastinate on this because they just, and I can apportion no blame here, just don't want to sit down and take that on, because that's a headache. Even with all the forecasting models known to man, you are basically, it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be a fun task at all for anybody. One of my questions here, Pete, and I'm sorry if we're sort of going back, it seems to be a conversation coming thick and fast. The actual model itself, is it a standalone spreadsheet that people download? So it's not a cloud-based one, it's a document that people download?
Correct.
Right, okay. If a hotel doesn't have their ear on international travel and flight routes, if you don't have your ear to the ground on that, you're going to miss out incredibly quickly, and you're going to be behind your competitors when they start advertising to the markets that are now open. Have you given any consideration to trying to link that to a cloud-based one, like an API for flight updates, or even an email subscription list? I am in New York. I want to know when X market flies into me, because that would bloody help.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, very much. I mean, we built this as version 1, and with anything, you have to start with version 1. Doesn't matter whether you're, Bill Gates working on Windows version 1, or Steve Jobs with Wozniak sat in the garage, working out Apple. Mm-hmm. This is version 1, and we have a roadmap for where we're going to take this. We wanted to get this together, ensuring the quality, but getting this together as quickly as we could, reasonably. And like I mentioned, I'm impatient. So if anything, I would rather have had this ready 2 months ago, so that we could get this out and start helping people as quickly as possible. But yeah, our development roadmap is to take this into the cloud, and exactly as you said, is to start bringing all those other elements in that would be useful for people to make this better and better. We've got very far-reaching goals in terms of where we want to take this. So yeah, this is the beginning. This is ground level. Yeah.
Great. That's great to hear. I mean, there's so many tools in the hospitality industry, as you'll know, that look at what your competitors are doing, what kind of rates they're offering, wider market analysis tools. They'd be really interesting to plug into this as well. But yeah, I won't steal any of your thunder for 2 or 3 months from down the line.
Just to also learn from Bill Gates, let's not do a version Vista.
We're avoiding that.
It goes badly.
Don't do the half version. Don't do that. But to your end, and this goes to a bit of an old school thought. Whenever we did the budget process, we usually walked in the door with 3 budgets: the one that we were trying to get, the one that we hoped they didn't take, and the one that we probably ended up with. And they were all based on suppositions as to what we thought business would be like to influence top line revenues. Of course, influenced cost factors and distribution down to bottom line profits and so forth. Having a tool like this would be a wicked improvement over this, because what you're really basically saying is no question can go unanswered. Because if you walk in and anybody on the other side of the table wants to create a scenario of, well, what if you lost this channel of revenue, or this was a reduction in capabilities because you lost this feeder market, or you had to reduce your operations by this much.
Do, right? Which they always
always do. They always try to trip you up like, aha, I'm smarter than you can go and say, but no, I have the answer. But you would be able to go over and say, look, if this happened, this is the impact to us financially. This is how it trickles down to the cost factors. These are the reductions we'd probably have to make operationally. These are the changes we have to make within our marketing strategy. It would show the residual impacts. It may not be completely 100%. This is down to the cent, although I'm being proposing that may not be the case. But just it gives them a nice impact value that says, yes, if we lost that channel, or we lost that market, or we lost that segment of opportunity, this would be the numbers impact to us and the impact on our budget as it goes forward from that. So, yeah, kudos in that sense.
Absolutely, and and I think quite a few of you have been alluding to this. Like, say, normally this time of year we would be, hotels would be in 3rd, 4th, however many rounds of budgeting. Because normally, obviously, it goes in stages, and that would be locked now. Normally, we'd be locked, and as Ben was saying, things are ever changing, and I think it's the lead time for people to be doing stuff, and it's across all areas. It's lead time for guests to be booking. It's lead time for hotels to be managing things, and obviously that's the same with forecasting. I say because January feels like the landscape could look entirely different than it does today, and yet it's less than 3 months away. So with that shorter lead time, we're going to have to make quicker decisions. So again, that's why that was our feeling in terms of creating this. And and right at the heart of this, and Fran, maybe you can talk better to this than I can. The core reason why we wanted to do this was to help people, because and I get the feeling from everyone on the line here too, have such passion for hospitality is, wanting to do what is possible to help the industry and keep people afloat, because that is, at the heart of this as well.
Is there a cost? You go to a website and download it. What was the website again?
So the website is hotel-forecast.com. So there is a cost to this. Yeah, I mean, obviously we are a commercial business. We do want to help people, but obviously, as Fran said, we put an enormous amount of time into creating this. And normally, like I said, we would be selling consultancy time to build this in terms of the way that we're doing it. The cost for the program is $495. We're doing an opening special preferential VIP rate with 20% off. It's likely we're going to extend that at least until Christmas. As we say, the core here is to help people. And we do provide support as well in terms of if people do struggle when they download it and they find something they can't quite work out, we're available to email and to help. Obviously there are some limits to that in terms of how much we can help in terms of time we can give to individuals. But as I say, this is about us giving to the industry and helping people. So yeah, that's the access in terms of how people can get it. Yeah.
Congratulations, because you found a friction point, a pain point that every hotelier can relate to, and you're offering something reasonably priced that really, anybody can afford, even in these times, if it's going to save them time and let them focus on other things and give them tools to make better decisions moving forward. So well done.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
even though we lost David, there is another additional British contingency that has dropped in on us.
I figured there weren't enough Brits on here, so
Gosh
I've
knows
been listening the whole time, so I have some comments I'd like to add. Good job, guys. It's really good. Like Adele said, I think you have identified a problem and created a real solid solution for it. And I think there was, some probing going on about the precision at which it can produce data. And I think right now, the thing I've learned is that no one has a clue what's going to happen tomorrow, right? They really can make their best guess, but there's so much more uncertain than there is certain right now. And if we look at how much time we typically spend on budgeting and the ordeal that is, and to make updates to that, how many hours it takes to have a product like this that maybe not precise, but is very accurate is what you need, because right now there's a big difference between accuracy and precision, right? Precision is really getting down to the penny, but accuracy is to the dollar. And so what we found, and this is what Fuel did early on, we created a spreadsheet similar to this for our own business, and we were able to create multiple scenarios, not just one budget. We literally at one point had 50 different scenarios that we were running based on all the things that could happen, the what ifs. We literally wrote down a list of questions of what if this happens, what if this happens, we hit this. And so we did this, and it took us hundreds of hours to do it, but it was what we needed to be able to prevent mass layoffs, because we were scared. We didn't know what was going to happen. And what happened with a lot of companies in the supply side and the hotel side was, well, let's just assume the worst and plan for the worst and hope for the best, but we're going to let a lot of people go. And I think a lot of people lost their jobs through lack of visibility into what was going to happen. So the fact that now people have a tool where they can run all these permutations with minimal effort and say, well, if we hit this benchmark, if we don't hit this, this is when we pull the trigger, or this is when we pivot. This is brilliant. I think it's really, really novel. I think no one else has this right now to simplify such a hard universal problem. So congrats to you guys.
And most importantly, the way you priced it. This is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, quite honestly, even if you think you don't need it, to get the sanity check of another kind of angle, that would take you way more than 5-6 hours to construct. The time cost alone is covered in getting another kind of point of view, and so this is something everyone should be looking at. Everyone should be running it against, even if you've already completed your budget. Is running that same kind of program against it. Because let's face it, most hotels are fairly fixed business. There isn't a huge amount of movement normally in their forecasts. And we talked about this early on where I said, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Like I've always run tech startups, and in tech startups, you run a tethered budget. If we hit this, it unlocks this part of the budget. If we miss this, it restricts this part of the budget, and everything's tethered. And the reason you have to do that is you can sign a deal that triples your company, and they can come out of nowhere. And you need to be able to know, how do you deploy? How do you make that happen? What do you do when you miss? How do you constrict and not have to lay people off? That's not something a hotel is going to do because there's not as much elasticity in the reality of their business. So having the ability to run multiple models, to consider the things that, even though you can't control them, you now have some measurement of the impact they have on your business. It's really smart. It's really cool.
I'd like to add to the value proposition of this two things. One is you hit it right on the head. This is this can be a stress test of your budget. And we've never had one in the industry. We don't do budgets by stress testing them. We do budgets by anticipatory value propositions. As you say, we're very linear about our budgeting. We're very moderate as to our variations. We don't really try to stress test out based on conditionals like this. This year has woken us up that those things can happen to our industry, let alone our individual hotel. But I'd also like to add the caveat that, Peter, I've never talked to you about this before, but when going through this, for people like me, when you give the variations of what can happen to the forecast, is an open door of what can you do to fix it. Okay, where from a marketing perspective, okay, you just took away that resource or that revenue, or you've just given me a fence on this, or you've just conditionalized this revenue. Go fix it. What is it you can do about that? Where if something Ed said very much earlier was, where is the business coming from what we have 6 months of information from? Where did the water flow from that it didn't flow from before, for Ben's Zen analogy back that I gave him? But the idea of it is that there is a resource to all things. It may not be a complete replacement by any stretch, but it can be a augmentation to it. So to me, there's a value proposition, just not knowing that there's a roadmap of what we can consider, but how can you fix this kind of stuff? What, by looking at these conditions, and that's something that is a whole residual value that I don't think you're really adding into the equation of what you're giving them.
And yeah, absolutely. And I think, you're right. I mean, we thought long and hard about how to price it, and all of you did a great job there of kind of talking exactly what I would have said in terms of, there's such a pain point and the number of hours that have to go into this. We really felt that it hit the right spot there in terms of that. And I think one of the things we haven't quite come to is just that the margins are so fine now, whereas in normal times we can get away with having more of a buffer towards getting into trouble. Right now, that margin is decreasing, and that's why we need to be more aware of all these things. So, yeah, couldn't agree more with all those things that you all just said.
So we can't just make this a huge positive thing. So I have to give you
That's right.
one angle of constructive criticism, and that is the picture you used of Lauren Gray on your website.
No.
And they put that there to throttle their success, because they know they're going to do so much of this that they're going to struggle. So slapping that up right now.
The thing that concerns me, Lauren, is compared to the other three pictures, you look like you have a giant head.
Because they scaled them to life.
Well, I was promised that this would be a very entertaining conversation, and
everyone here, Peter, is on their best behavior, and I don't know why.
No,
I know. This only happens when Lily's
even
here.
Changed what Ben actually said to sound really good. Ben actually said beer, not water. I mean, it's really strange how clean this show is.
And something about a cake stand. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I was trying to work out if I know Lauren well enough to make a joke, but
you do.
The key thing is that myself that I love a challenge, so that's why we put it there in response to that question.
If you can get past the picture, you're going to love the product.
I think one of the potentials in the future as well, Peter, and you may have considered this, is this cloud-based product eventually has the potential to become almost mission control for a reaction and mission control for the moving parts of a hotel. As an example, the one thing that's just swirling around my head, if you have a cloud ball and you have your flights connected into it, and you're in New York, and all of a sudden, you can no longer take flights in from Miami, you could automate instructions to marketing campaigns, Google, Bing, your meta search display, and remove those from the marketing, so you're not wasting your marketing dollars or pounds. I'm so used to saying dollars, I say dollars now.
Well, and heck, I mean, even from a simpler standpoint, because let's be honest, most hotels outsource their marketing to agencies. You could literally just have it trigger off a notification to the agency.
Yeah. Or
saying,
like an email saying you need to pause it from this hotel, or you need to pause it from this market.
Yeah, be aware of X, Y, and Z because this is happening.
I think you could go as far as with this as your imagination would take you, but it probably has a potential to grow a lot faster than just a spreadsheet that helps you for. And I'm not belittling just a spreadsheet, but I mean, a standalone spreadsheet.
Believe me, that's the target. Like we're not settling with just version 1. Everything has to start somewhere. So the growth potential is huge, and it's really clear that there is a lot of potential, and it can only grow and get even better.
Yeah.
I think Ben is still taking out, Peter, that you were referring to NFL football before referring to football. Ben knows, and I think he's just a little bitter about that.
Well, I mean, I could happily talk sports all day, but don't worry, Ben. First and foremost, I am a English football fan, and secondary an American football fan. So don't worry.
Oh yes, and there's with the yes.
We can go into teams later, but we'll maybe cover that one offline.
As long as you're not saying you're from Liverpool, then Stuart will stay on the show. Just so you know, if you say Liverpool, Stuart's out.
Wait, can we get him off the show?
Is that...
No, it's all about.
And I know I came late, so I probably missed this, but has anyone called attention to Dean's awesome T-shirt?
Super 8.
I mean, that is a fantastic T-shirt.
Like it. Is this a Star Wars one? Choices,
Yeah. I mean, the hospitality is strong in him.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, I was saying this to Lauren when we spoke a few weeks ago. I feel very remiss with my background. I need something here, and Edward, I'm loving the Avengers and Iron Man art behind you. Yeah.
The secret of my office is it's where everything my wife will not allow me to put in my house ends up.
Yeah, I'm
Including
experiencing the same.
No, it's accurate.
and I include you.
So what is next for you?
Yeah.
What's on deck? What do you think is the next thing you want to address in progressing this product?
Yeah, absolutely. So roadmap on deck in terms of coming next. Definitely moving, into the cloud is definitely stage 2. And then building in, the key thing with stage 2 is going to be getting into the cloud and then dealing with the initial things we can go with, because it's not a problem. It's a good problem to have. When we move into the cloud, there's so many more possibilities. So it's going to be a case of detailing the most important ones first and then continuing to grow from there. That's probably the key thing to grow from there. The other thing is utilizing our knowledge from, I didn't really go into this at the start, but one of the big things we do in the business aside from this is that we have a range of simulation programs. So we created the world's first ever hotel simulation program, which was created back in 1994, which again, I can't take credit for because I wasn't in the business in 94. That program is mainly used in a teaching, training and learning environment to teach people the intricacies of hotel management and how it works. So the other thing for us is building in even more of that knowledge. We've already used a lot of that knowledge in terms of the algorithms, the back end of this spreadsheet and how it works in terms of forecasting. And, it's the evolution of that into the next step as well, in terms of further technology, in terms of that approach, in terms of how we can, improve the model. Yeah.
Nice. Very exciting.
Yeah, it's really
Another
exciting.
So there's no blockchain on the roadmap, right? Because this conversation will end right now if there is.
Bitcoin.
There's no blockchain, no.
Another thing, Peter, when you move into the cloud, you depending on the information that the hotels give, and depending on your information processing policies, you gain access to a lot of anonymized data, a lot of aggregatable data that you can sort to start to pull patterns from, and you can give people thresholds on the accuracy of their forecasts based
Absolutely. Yeah.
on the historical data we can start to
You
find.
can also start benchmarking as well.
Well, and
Yeah,
actually,
like a-
that's an interesting thing. Is if you when you go to the cloud, if you make an element of this where they report in on a regular basis how they performed to that,
like an
and you-
STR report.
Well, yeah,
But-
but you actually build value on why they should do that. So it'll actually help them like spot issues down the road because of where they are in January. But by getting them to report to that, you can actually start actively suggesting when someone's building a budget in a specific area that you have a data set on, and you can say, hey, people in your position tend to misstate this number, positive or negative, by this percentage.
Mhm.
And you get indicators too. You'll start getting flagged indicators as things do change, that you know what the impact of it is based on what the change was, and you begin to go over and create pattern performance at that point.
But as a smart Brit, I bet he's already thought of this.
Yes.
Well, I was going to
Categorize
say behind your hotel simulation products. You know, you're looking at metrics behind that give each individual going through more of a look at what's happening in the competitive set and how they measure against that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, definitely this has been a thought, and it's great to hear it come out here as well. So it's always, like I said, good to have validation of ideas and know that you're not by yourself in thinking it's a good idea. And, you know, like I say,
Wait. I want to be clear. Just because we're saying it doesn't mean it's a good idea. there have been many bad ideas.
You should have
born
been here
from
for the
this show.
biofilm call.
Yeah.
okay, well, I did also say at least you realize you're not alone. So at least we can be together in this.
You're not the boat alone as you go over the waterfall. You're fine for that. And if you need a pink brain, Ben and his compatriot Tristan, they're always trying to plan to take over the world, and I think they're just down the road from you. So if you need evil thoughts to take over the world, they are in your backyard.
Perfect. Yeah, you know, and I think that you know, comparison with SDR is a good one. You know, we work a lot with SDR and the sort of, you know, projects we do already in terms of the simulations, in terms of training events, in terms of other consultancy things we've done. I'm sure, you know, we're all abundantly aware of the fantastic stuff that SDR do. So yeah, I think there's definitely a benchmarking angle with this, and the other angle you mentioned in terms of that help and guidance, especially like, you know, we talked earlier about forecasting staffing cost percentages and how difficult that's going to be, and the more we can help sort of guide people in the right direction and say, you know, people in your part of the world or people with your size of hotel have been, you know, within this range, then that could be hugely powerful for people. So there's huge opportunity. Yeah,
because too often I find that hotels, their data set is too narrow. But if you can start folding in other data from their region, now all of a sudden you can get really sharp, really, really sharp. And the insights of kind of the background performance of all the KPIs of properties, I mean, my gosh, that could be game changing.
Yeah, and as we know, data is power. If you can measure it, you can control it. So,
right,
you know, that's key.
Yeah, very
so
cool.
How long is it going to take us to get into the cloud?
Good question. I mean, that's where we go from here. We don't have a firm date yet. That's where we go from here. You know, key focus was all energy into launch version 1. So now we go headlong into version 2. You know, as I said, I'm probably one of the most impatient people you'll meet. So as quickly as is possible, whilst maintaining, as we had said, all the other things in terms of the accuracy, the quality, all those other things that need to be there.
So one of the things when we were talking about pricing on it, and Adele, thank you for asking about the pricing, is that we were all over the place with what we could do with it. And then we got really generous, and maybe too generous. But what we said is if you buy it now, for the next 12 months, you'll get all the updates. So that was something, again, taking a look at what we could add for added value as we got the launch product done, and then added to other enhancements, as well as create a community where people could share some ideas, which is, of course, back to the background we all have on what we do with our association management and our engagement with our peers, right? So we're hoping to, you know, again, looking at all of that, it's everything is always more complicated by 10, right, than what you think it is, right? So again, the cloud will be first, right? I guess sounds like a Peter.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a valuable point. We really decided, because we wanted to get this together, and we didn't want people who came in early, were early adopters. We want them to get, the same experience as someone who maybe comes in 3-4 months when maybe version 2 is ready. So that's why, as Fran said, if people buy into this, then yeah, they will be given access for any other updates that come over the next 12 months, and then we will develop further from there. And again, as Fran said, just to make reference to this, another thing we've included within the access to this is a private LinkedIn group where people gain access to once they buy into the toolkit. To be able to share best practice among each other, and then for us to be able to bring support and guidance in for that group as well. Because, a lot of this feels like, I'm sure we all feel this. I'm sure everyone is, more in isolation than we would normally be. A lot of us obviously are still working from home. So again, a lot of these hotels will be more isolated than they are usually. So again, wanting to provide a forum for those people to be able to come together, gain guidance and support, and just have a, maybe a bit of an outlet to talk to other people, and if someone says, well, hey, look, I found great value doing X, Y, and Z, then that's great. That helps inform other people. And also, it allows us to continue to feed help and guidance into the group as well.
Well, and what's important too in that, because in the phase you're in right now, people can pull this down and then alter the sheet.
Mm-hmm.
It's important for you to understand what are the common alterations that are happening, because when you go to move into the cloud, if you haven't learned what those are, the cloud version all of a sudden will become less usable than the sheet if you didn't account for common adjustments that people are making post download.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're open to all feedback on this. Anyone who works developing software has to have a fairly thick skin in terms of feedback and in terms of tech like this. So, but all of that goes to make it better. So that I mean that as a positive thing, because all that feedback, as you say, is essential just to provide what it is that people actually want. And as Fran said earlier, whatever you think it is at the start, it probably is 10 times more complicated. So, and again, you need that. You need that lived experience of people who've gone. I've used this in anger and I've used it for 6 weeks. This is what I learned, and then you go, great. Now we can put that in. You pick the things you need from that, and some of the things you go, well, everyone's not going to need that, but everybody will need those, and those things.
Right.
True. Well, we only
you're brave, and I really, really appreciate it, because I know I personally have asked some vendors that I worked with. Sometimes we can come up with our own workarounds faster than we can get an answer for a workaround to our problem from your tech support. So won't you please make a LinkedIn group so I can talk to the other hoteliers who are using it, because surely they're having the same experience as I am, and they were paralyzed with fear that it was going to become something negative. But you embrace feedback. Absolutely. It is the winning ticket. And if your customers are talking to each other and trying to help them how to use the tool even better, it's just a fantastic thing. So well done.
Oh, thank you. I think it comes from the nature that all of us, so Fran, myself, everyone else that we work with, we all have that background of actually being hospitality operators at heart. So we have that hospitality nature in terms of, there is no such thing as no, we can't. There's, let me see what we can do. That's the heart of hospitality. So yeah, absolutely.
And you should do that, because you say no all the time when I ask questions. Come on, no.
Nobody else thinks that, but you, for some reason, Lauren.
It might be just me. I'm not.
Well, to be fair, you keep asking completely unrelated tech companies when they're getting into augmented reality.
That's true.
I'm surprised you haven't asked Peter that yet.
AI, BI, all that. Yeah.
Just pick two letters and put them together and say,
I know we only asked for a half hour of your time, and we're well past an hour and 15ish or so. We'd love for you to continue on. I mean, I don't know if we have any more that you want to make sure we don't miss in the conversation.
I think we've covered everything on the toolkit. I mean, unless anyone has any other questions, but no, valuable to be here. And no, I'm definitely, and I think Fran's sticking around as well. So yeah, very happy to move the conversation on and talk about something else.
Just so you're really clear, this is where it starts to go downhill.
Oh, yeah. Slope of dialogue, dissertation, and where Ben's wrong. Just
Well, to
No,
save
Ben,
you
just so
from
you know, I've
some of
been
that.
on the road with Lauren for weeks and weeks and weeks on a time. So you can imagine, and in cars with him for hours and planes for hours. So I don't know if anybody else has had those experiences, but if you want to share them personally, email
Well,
them.
so Fran, with that, I do have to ask then, in that much exposure, have you witnessed any of the times that he was struck by
By
lightning?
lightning, just what I was going to ask.
You don't mean literally? Do you mean just with
No. Lauren has been directly struck by lightning 3 times in his life, and indirectly another 3 times. I was just curious if you witnessed any of them, because he's been struck by lightning 6 total times.
No, I see him have ideas that he thinks are lightning, but I've never seen him.
And we know this is true because you use the word thinks.
yes, I think it's perfect.
So to keep this from
the driveway,
derailing,
that we all could talk about other things than what he
yes.
was planning to talk about.
To keep this from derailing too much, I do have to go. But I did want to come in, Peter, and hear about what you were doing. I think it's amazing what you've put together for the industry, and these are the types of things that just remind me of why I love working in this industry, is how everyone comes together when the world gets crazy. This industry is such a cool community that way. So thank you for that. And I'm sorry I haven't been able to be on much today, but I did want to come in and say, great job on this. This is a great product.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
And if people want to know about you and where to go, all that kind of fun stuff, where can they find you?
You can find me at flip.to. You can find me on social media, Edward St. Ange. Peter, you may want to look me up on Twitter if you want to have some fun about American football.
Absolutely.
No one else should follow me on Twitter. I am Kansas City now on NFL, and then UCF for college.
Perfect. Okay, I'm New York Giants, so I'll tweet you later and we can talk.
Excellent. All right, everyone, have a great weekend. Peter, thank you again. Fran, it was nice to see you, by the way. Been
Very
too long.
nice to see you too.
All right, thanks.
Bye, Edward. Thanks.
So with that in mind, I didn't get to send you the list, Peter, as to what Robert has sent to us. But is there anything that is mindfully in market right now that outside of our current discussion that you would say would be fun to throw into the dialogue as to what you're seeing or what you think would be of interest? Because there's just so many moving pieces right now with what's happening. Anything that pops in your head as you're saying, hey, this would be something that I think would be interesting to kind of throw out to discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing for me would be the kind of distribution piece. And I think we talked a little bit about that earlier in terms of, different markets people are focused on and, the ever-changing landscape of that in terms of what people are looking at in terms of the kind of known markets and then maybe the unusual markets. I think one of the things I've heard from a few operators is that they've started to see new markets that they wouldn't have been able to attract. And I don't just mean, we're seeing a lot of local tourism, but I'd be interested to hear other people's thoughts in terms of what they, what do people think going to happen in terms of sort of the sales and distribution angle over the next few months and moving into the start of 2021.
I know I have heard some hoteliers say that they're considering doing, rentals for locally at an affordable price. And I think that the master of the spin on the whole concept would be Citizen M. Kudos to them. They came out with something super creative, which is the 29 nights for about $1,500. If they only have, in the East Coast, they have Boston and Washington and New York. So an Amtrak line, it's an easy thing. If I was a young person and I wanted to try those cities to see how I felt about them for a month each, $1,500, and you get to be in a cool environment and explore another city. If I was virtually working and young enough to be adventurous like that, that would be very interesting. And they've limited to 1,000 of these global passports or whatever they're calling it. If they sell all of them for 1 month, that's $1.5 million that they can pay the rent and keep some staff on. It's kind of creative. I like it.
Very cool.
And you
Yeah.
just picked the exact example I would have used, because I was reading about it the other day. I get all of their information. They're one of the many hotel brands that I love. I obviously love all hotel brands based on we work with a lot of them. But Citizen M, the idea there that they produced is staggering. I think it's amazing, and I echo your thoughts. I thought exactly the same. I thought this had come out 5 or 6 years ago. I would have been a customer of this. In normal times, I'm on the road. I'm normally traveling a lot. I normally travel, an insane number of air miles a year. And, there were times when it was barely worth me having an apartment because I was fly in and fly out of London. And, but I was in lots of other different cities where there would have been a Citizen M. So that would have been perfect. I think it is about being innovative and looking for those angles that maybe, that you haven't ever considered before.
They do everything creatively.
They do.
They don't follow any of the rules unless they choose those rules. I love that about them. They're very interesting company to watch.
I think it also points out a stark reality of brands not keeping up. And I mean, because even though Citizen M is a brand, when we look at the larger brands, the Marriotts, the Hiltons, the IHGs, even the Hyatts and so forth, they still seem to be stuck in shock. They're just still even rolling out solutions to current COVID identifications of process and procedures. Then they throw out offers that are kind of tone deaf. Weeks of wonder. Okay, I wonder where I'm going to be safe. They seem to be they seem to be a little missing as to the concerns of current usage and so forth. And not all hoteliers can do what Citizen M did, but the fact that Citizen M had enough locations and offered something that was uniquely able to be put together like that, maybe management companies can maybe do something like that.
I was going to say the same, because they're kind of in that Goldilocks zone, right? They're not too big like Hilton's and Marriott's, where they have this juggernaut that is really hard to make any impactful change because you've got such a variety of product and so much bureaucracy and red tape. They're a lot more. They've always been more agile. But I really think the big opportunity here is for the independents. And I obviously work with a lot of independents. We're seeing, a lot of them realized early on that there was a segment of the industry that really didn't hurt, actually is doing better year over year than any other segment, and that was extended stay. Extended stay has had a really good 2020. And so a lot of the independents are looking at this and saying, well, especially if you're in a southern area and the weather's a little more temperate this time of year than up north, a lot of them are really going for this snowbird kind of mentality and extended stay and offering deals similar to Citizen M, but at their one location. So it's month-long stays, 2-month-long stays at a deep discount. And they're filling up doing this. And it's keeping the lights on, it's paying the mortgage, it's keeping the staff on the payroll. And it's really going to help them survive through the winter. So just being creative and thinking differently. You don't have to be the one night stay kind of just fighting for every dollar. You can pivot a little bit and do something new.
Yeah, and I think it links in with that Citizen M model too. In that, extended stay in Citizen M, obviously, and that model is very different. But it's that sort of, you can live here because we have sort of living room type space, lounge type space, co-working type space. And I know, I agree in terms of the bigger brands can't pivot quite as easily, but it's really interesting to see the pipeline that like Marriott has for Moxie in terms of that brand. And I don't want to just say Moxie is similar to Citizen M because that would be unfair. It's very different in its own right. But in that kind of space, there's like you mentioned there, Stuart, in terms of extended stay and those properties where you can be there for a longer period of time because it's the kind of space you want to be for a longer period of time.
If you're a condo type property, in a beach destination like a Daytona or Panama City or Myrtle Beach, those guys could, they've been doing okay, but they can really do well through the winter, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think actually the places that are like a condo where you have everything in your own space and you have space to cook your own meals and feel at home. I think they do offer an advantage though to places like Citizen M because that whole communal thing, which I think is where people's hearts are, that we're social people, and they really got that right. They love that club room concept. They love that they can go down and work in this area or this area or this area and be around other people, even though if they're quietly working alone on their computer. But I wonder how is it going to work if people feel that, you know, how many people can they fit in that space? It's quite a big space in New York. I haven't seen the other properties. It's quite a big space in New York, but once you start putting a couple of dozen people in there, you know, you're not necessarily within 6 feet of each other. I mean, how exactly is that going to work? That's what I wonder about.
Well, we discount the fact that up until the time that COVID hit, we were already talking about a culture called digital nomads anyway.
Mhm.
And Peter, to your point, you know, you're traveling and so forth, and you're on the road. You know, the diminishment of having a permanent residence, you know, is more of a place to just swap out suitcases almost.
Yeah, there were brands like Rome that were doing this already, right?
Yeah. And what possibly happened to them was that they slowed down in the transfer of where they were going to, but that didn't mean that they didn't still stay away from their residence during that time. They may just have stayed in London for a month instead of a week or two that they normally would have, or whatever, you know, would be, because they don't want to go through the 14-day quarantines, whatever they had to go to travel between, but they still had to be somewhere. And Adele, to your point, having that opportunity to control a little bit more of your environment by having some sort of suite, you know, cooking facilities or common, you know, areas to be able to work from and so forth was very critically important. And those people still existed. And Stuart, you brought this up in many shows before. We had to go through a cycle of business type, which was those that were feeling invulnerable to this, or that were discounting the impact of this, and that were traveling in spite of what was going on.
Travelers, they were the early.
Yeah. And your survey,
right? It was for normal people early on. There was a stigma to travel. It was reckless. It was not responsible. But that's gone. You know, if you look at the data, most people have traveled at this point since March. Most people, 53% was the last data I saw, which is over half of the population have traveled at least once. And what we're seeing is it's definitely shorter, it's definitely closer, but they're traveling more frequently. People are going on multiple trips. I've been on 3 since March, and I'm sure everyone on here has been on at least one, and probably more than one. So there's an opportunity. People are traveling. You've just got to figure out, how do you make it so that they want to travel to you? And doing things like I can watch the kids. I've got something set up so kids that are working remotely can still do their schooling. Or we've had a couple of folks that are doing big campaigns. One was calling it, work resortly instead of remotely, and so you can come and they set out areas on the porch so you could listen to the ocean while you're working, things like that. So you got to get creative, and you got to remember why people are scared, and reassure them that you're taking care of that piece of it as well.
So just when we're trying to convince people, come and stay in our beautiful resort, and, you know, keep your laptop with you by the pool or the beach or on the terrace, whatever, the FBI goes and says, don't use hotel Wi-Fi. Did you see that one?
Yeah, they popped up with the security issue. But then again, all seasoned travelers know that a VPN is as much a part of their package as anything that they ever travel with. You know,
I don't agree with that, Lauren. I think you're a tech nerd. I think the vast majority of people don't know what a VPN is.
I won't disagree with that. But I think those that travel for business, either their business requires it, or they're aware of the fact that signing into unsecured Wi-Fi is not probably their smartest thing. Does everybody know that? No, unfortunately, or there wouldn't be such a booming business for it. But go ahead, Dean. I'm sorry.
Does everybody use it? So I know about it. I know that I should use it. Do I use it all the time? Probably not as often as I should.
I know I should keep my shoes on a plane, but the first thing I do when I get on there is to kick them off.
What advice should hoteliers give to people coming in pre-stay to help them be safe on the Wi-Fi?
Yeah, because they don't want to create fear, right? They don't want to add to the existing fear, so they don't even want to mention.
Yeah, right. I can't imagine, like, we've got enhanced cleaning policies because the floor isn't safe. Everyone's wearing masks because the air isn't safe. Use a VPN because the Wi-Fi isn't safe. I'll just go. Thanks. I'd pay, but my card's not safe either.
And make sure you wear gloves when you pick up the snacks, okay? Just saying.
Yeah.
But Stuart, Peter, I guess to make sure that you have the link for Stuart, Fuel Travel does this amazing consumer sentiment travel survey. They've been doing it now. You've done 9 of them so far, right, Stuart?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Really,
haven't
really.
talked about the 10th on this show, but yeah, we've done 10. We're going to take
Where
a
do
break.
we find them? Where do we find them?
Fueltravel.com/COVID. You'll get the list of all our COVID resources, the podcasts, and the sentiment studies.
It's like watching the ocean ebb and flow, the demand, the interest, the hesitancy, the
I see quite a few of them on LinkedIn. So definitely get the majority of them through there because it's been really interesting to watch over the last few months how things have changed in terms of 6 months ago people's sentiment towards when people thought things would pick up, and then see it sort of ebb and flow and change. So amazingly interesting.
Yeah, and Peter, the brains of the operation is actually in the chat room. Melissa, Stuart's just the eye candy. He's the operation.
She's the better looking.
Melissa's got the whole thing going on. Yeah. Stuart's the token. But to your point, the idea of it is, and this kind of goes a little bit full circle to your conversation, Peter, about the hotels as they're looking for these new venues of opportunity, much like what Citizen Edmond did. So they need to, before they make that step, they got to project forward what that would mean based on success ratios. Like if it failed, if it was partially successful, it was fully successful. What does that make as an impact for us? What's our obligation to that? Because selling only 1,000, no matter how good the benefit of it is there a second round to it? Do they plan that if this goes that well, they're going to do another one? Or are they really going to keep it so exclusive that it was only the 1,000 people that did it? Or are they going to say, this is a great new model? Let's sell
I think it's a good idea that they limited it, at least in the beginning, because they need to know what the impact is going to be on the crowding of their common spaces. And there's no way you can predict that. And I think they meant globally. So it might really impact, the U.S. Eastern Corridor, and it might, maybe it'll have less of or more of an impact in Europe.
Yeah, I think it's also about, this is a further opportunity for more technology. And as you'll have guessed, I'm already a technology nerd in terms of all these things. I think there's this room for, hotels have tried to do it for a long time in terms of, telling you, well, when's breakfast busy? When's breakfast quiet? But invariably, it's something stuck in the elevator that tells you, hey, it's busy when it closes because everyone wants to get in last minute before they go for the day, or last minute at weekends before it closes. And, I think there's the ability to share with people into their rooms and say, the bar is quiet, the lounge area, the co-working space, maybe we have 8, we have 18 pods within the co-working space. We tell you when they're free, and you go downstairs when it's available. Or you have webcams in the areas, so when you're in your room, you can flick your TV on, and you can see how busy the areas are and decide if you want to go down. So I know if it's too busy and you can't go down, that'll be annoying, but at least you won't leave your room and be annoyed getting there. So for every problem there's a solution, and I think there's lots of scope with that, and I think that's going to be really key in terms of if these are the newer models and these are going to work, then things like this are going to have to be more prevalent.
I wonder if we're going to have reservations for everything.
Maybe.
Reservations for breakfast.
I would expand a little bit, and this goes something that we've been beating a drum on for. I have, and I know Stuart's with me on this one. Is the collaboration with your local businesses. Getting that, knowing that your local coffee shop may have what you don't have in the sense of common spaces you just mentioned, or the fact that they're offering an incentive for you to literally walk out, stretch your legs, go around the corner, sit down. They got space if that's what you're feeling is comfortable with, or whatever it is, or restaurants or open areas or whatever. Making it where you're communicating from a larger footprint than just what you're offering within your internal amenities. And that goes beyond just the workspace or come on by. It's the whole collaboration of, I have an audience, you have an audience, let's share the audiences, let's collaborate on what we're offering. Let's give the people a reason why this is the best place to be because you're there, I'm here. That's an integral part, I think, of the marketing process that has to be included now.
So you guys are being really optimistic and talking about, well, they did this to protect people. The scarcity was just to make sure it works. To me, the marketing side of me is like, no, they did that to create more demand. Because when people know there's only 1,000, they're going to probably sell a lot more of it because people are going to want to not miss out. I guarantee they expand it once they hit the 1,000. Though.
Sure. And how do we know it's just 1,000? I mean, in all honesty, who's going to sell 5,000?
Yeah, if I was selling it, I would say there's only 1,000 too, because it would sell a buttload more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clever.
Yeah,
and I think we've got opportunities here too. I mean, we're talking about the fact that hotels are going to have a certain volume, depending. I know we've talked about different models, different locations, different styles, but distressed inventory is going to be something which is going to be key in terms of what do we do with it. And you mentioned that local market there. So, I've seen a lot of hotels saying, well, look, we've got meetings and event space, so we'll hire that out and you can host a virtual event. So if you need to connect with another business, you can do this virtually. So again, I think it's going to be a case of, we're talking about this lead time shortening. So it's going to be a case of, well, how do we get the product out to people? I hate using the word product with hotels, but just to really break it down, how do we get that to people to say, well, hey, look, we've got 4 meeting rooms available. Do you want to book one? They're available in 2 days' time. So, the pricing could be different than potentially how it was before, but at least it's bringing revenue in. So it's, finding those creative ways of getting people in, use the space, make it happen. And again, technology is going to be a huge driver with all of this. So I just think, it's going to be obviously, but not at the detriment of delivering great hospitality.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit full circle to a little bit more of the value proposition of what you're providing as well. And just in general budgeting and forecasting, not just what you're doing, but in, we talk about IT, strengthening your Wi-Fi. Right now, as we watch the bomb drops and people are running their hotels, they're coveting their cash flows. And they're looking now to decide how they're going to be spending what cash they have for what purposes. A couple of hotel companies false started in their marketing, and then their markets were shut down again, and they can't restart. They permanently closed because they started, they spent the money that they had left to think that they were going to start their business, and then their market shut down, and they just don't have the funds to do it again. And so they're closed and been acquired by somebody else. But to make decisions like, wow, this is a really good time for us to jack up our IT and do a really good, strong Wi-Fi mesh network in our property that's going to provide a value proposition to our guests that we get to feature security, speed, all the things that are critical to people's wanting to use it. And then also to something that's near and dear to Stuart. Hey, let's replace the door locks so that they can be remotely controlled. And I don't have to use keys anymore for people to touch stuff because I can use my phone because I have a super cool booking engine that also allows me to do keyless entry, like Fuel Travel's app, right, Stuart?
Sure, you keep selling my products. I love it.
But those things, that's investment. I mean, nobody likes spending that much on door locks and so. But those financial decisions at a time when you're questioning your cash flows are tough. And if you don't have some process plan as to where the cash might come from or why and how much, at least in a forecasted sense, you're not going to want to make those decisions. You're not going to want to pull the trigger because you might be spending money that you may need for operations later on that you just don't have anymore. So it helps to be able to determine those by using things like what you have.
Yeah, and I think extending that conversation a little bit, because this is a marketing show, I think you're touching on something that we're preaching a lot right now, which is focusing on your own assets and investing in stuff you own. A lot of people, they're beginning to turn back on, they're looking at opportunity, that there is some demand, and they're putting their marketing budget all into advertising. They're renting space on Google, they're renting space on Facebook ads, versus really looking at what assets you have already and how can I improve my CRM so that I can leverage my guest data that I already have a little more effectively? How can I improve my website to have more robust content that's going to show up higher in search engines so that I get this ongoing long-term value from the investment versus having to pay now and then pay tomorrow and the next day and the next day? We spend way too much time leasing exposure versus owning exposure. And so that's where everyone needs to be focusing on right now, whether it's technical infrastructure, whether it's your database and your CRM, whether it's investing in a mobile app so that people can come straight to you and bypass Google completely and book their next vacation, or you can communicate with them in real time. So to your point earlier when you were saying, well, notifying people when certain areas are empty. Well, they have a mobile app. You can do that in real time really quickly. So those are the things that people should be looking to invest in with the money that they do have.
Yeah, and I think it's a case of looking.
I'm gonna have to disagree slightly. If they have the money to do that, short term, if there's no heads in beds and no money in the account, they're gonna fit. And I'm not just saying this because obviously we provide fantastic Google Ads management. I'm saying this as from a cash flow perspective. If there's no money in the bank, I get what you're saying, Stu, and people, if they have the capacity, need to sort of buckle down for the long term and look at long-term cheaper things like improving the CRMs and work on the website content. But if the chips are down and they don't have the money to make payroll that month, they may have to lease space on Google and Facebook just to
They,
get the
they,
business.
they may, but I would certainly invest in the infrastructure first before I did that. Because you're going to catch people. Because you could spend advertising dollars tomorrow, right? And then your local area has some kind of restriction that comes in, and every single person you just earned is now canceling, and then you're screwed. You spent the money, you got nothing to show for it. If you had invested in your data, you can then reach back out to them at a fraction of the cost, the people that have stayed with you.
Yeah, I guess it's a balancing act of having a one side on what's going on in your region, but also balancing the other side of getting cash into the hotel as well.
I would add the marketing twist to that and saying that, not to disagree or agree with both, because I think you both have made excellent points to us. But if that did happen, if that scenario as we rolled it through, my first reaction would be to recapture those people because of the displacement that they created and not lose the monies that it's spent for me to gather them with what Ben said, but to say, look, sorry, this happened, but know for certainty there's no penalty to you, and that we are more than happy to give you the opportunity to rebook. Let's not try to give you your cash back right away. Can I get you back at another time when this passes or this changes? Create creative marketing solutions, I guess, is probably what I'm saying, to see if you can still keep your hands on that cash flow that was created from spending it on advertisement, so that you can get them back at a time when it's not prohibitive for them.
But I also think what Stuart was saying was right about leveraging the cheapest data you've got. So I agree and I disagree with you. But
I think there's
we both agree with each other.
that's fine.
I think there's a big piece here on making sure that people really understand the ROI of the different channels that they're marketing through as well. So making sure we know, well, are we spending lots on this channel and getting really nothing from it? Are the channels out there, like Stuart was saying, where are those quick wins? Where are I want to say cheaper, but where are those better value options that are going to bring more to us? That's the value of then, like you say, certain Google ad campaigns, things like that. That's why you need to be focused on the right areas, and then bringing in that help when you need it. Like if it's something you don't know, then you need to make sure that you bring in the help and guidance, because otherwise you'll be struggling.
Mm-hmm. Dean, I think we were going to say something. I kind of stepped on you for a moment. Sorry.
Speaking to your point earlier, that in order to do all those things you just described about rebooking, then get that cash flow later, you've got to be able to control that conversation. It's just another aspect of the importance of direct bookings. The other thing, though, I was going to say earlier too, is I was a little surprised by is that there aren't more hotel renovations going on. Because let's go back to pre-COVID for just a moment, and hotels were out there and know that they have to fix things and renovate things, and they had plans to do things, and then COVID hit, right, and screwed everything up. Okay, but you know what? You had that plan in place before, and one of the challenges of any major renovation is you have to close down parts of your hotel to do it. Boy, what a time to do it. Let's just so close down the hotel, get that renovation done, get it done now, so that on the back end of this thing, and that may be 1 year, that may be 2 years, whatever it may be, but somewhere there's a back end of this thing that when you come out on the back end of this thing, you're ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
If you survive this thing.
Yeah.
I
It
think.
depends on your position. You capture.
Anyway, why not close now?
I mean,
Yeah, I guess.
like that. Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Lauren.
No, I'm sorry. Some hotels were smart like that. They had already planned for it, and they just decided to go under the knife. And in contention to a lot of my clients going through this, where they were suspending a lot of their things, we went forward and said, this is the time to take the car off the racetrack, so to speak, and replace the engine. Do all the heavy lifting on the website redevelopment. Do the heavy lifting on the things that would distract from business normally. And now that we don't have that distraction, take the opportunity to do those kind of things, to Dean's point, where you can do the in-depth stuff. But I think what's going to be said later is that some companies were leveraging their finances to do the refurb anyway, and instead they started to harbor that as cash flow and just decided that it's better to hang on to the money than it is to pitch it in, I guess. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
That's literally what I was going to say. I mean, from an owner's perspective as well, I'd be really upset beyond upset, if I spent $5 million doing a hard renovation, and then 2 months later I had to close because I didn't have the cash to pay the staff and the market collapsed. I'd be less unhappy if I spent $50,000 on a new website, booking engine, CRM update, and they didn't go to the new owner.
I'm going to bring up a big problem.
He's not here. He's not here today.
No, Tris isn't here.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, tell him I'm bringing it up. No, hotels. I'm sorry. This is just a bit of a whine. go and make this massive plan on refurb and doing all their work, and absolutely no clear-cut plan on remarketing. It's just like they feel like it's a field of dreams. Build it and they will come. We've done the refurb, we've done all these great cool things, and they literally weeks before they reopen or key themselves out or whatever like this. Oh, well, we should do some marketing. Duh, you think? They don't seem to have this marketing component to it. They don't have a good solid. How are we going to present what we are
it's
now?
Almost as if operations and marketing don't communicate well.
Imagine.
Never heard that.
but
Your online content reputation, and Adele, I'm fringing into your territory a little bit here, but if you're doing a complete refurb of the hotel top to bottom, there may be an opportunity to wipe the slate clean and start over again. Now, they're not to do that as well, because as you do lose all the good content too. But if you really needed to do that refurb and it shows, that's an opportunity.
Right.
And
but
sometimes we've had success in applying for the slate through wiped clean for a very soft refurb. Like we've put up some new lights.
Oh,
there's some lipstick on this animal.
Yes.
But Peter, to your point, you'd be the precursor to what I just talked about, because a lot of what I would be doing as a marketing forward projection would be based on what your modeling would create as what I would have anticipatory funding and refunding and cash flows and potentials and what have you, is because there'd be some sort of, fences on the side of the roads as to the direction of, well, we need to, for that to happen, we have to have certain thresholds of income or certain controllables in that process of forecast for us to say, yes, we can spend that kind of funding on those particular channels. And to add to that, which you haven't put together on yet, but I'm sure you will as you put it on the cloud, the marketing component of conversion per channel and dollars spent and so forth as a contributor to your forecasting model that says at this time we should shift our funding into these channels because of the conversion that it represents for the market that it's drawing, for the ADR that we're wanting and the occupancy we're trying to attain, turns into a whole new modeling as to controlling your market spends with the forecasting you're talking about.
And you've got certain metrics as well, because there's obviously a whole raft of metrics that we have, and not just within marketing but everything. But it's like, so for how much money are we spending actually filters down into profit as well, in terms of doing things like flow through analysis and things like that. So again, the ROI on that marketing spend, is that taking us where we thought it would? Because if it's not, then we need to know about it as well. So yeah, it's about understanding it from a planning perspective, and it's about tracking it through to the realization and deployment as well.
Sometimes you do a marketing, you do some sort of initiative, and they're telling you that this is how much business was brought in because of that. They're tracking it in whatever way, and it's brought you these many thousands of dollars. But you really, at the hotel, when you look at your overall, you're not seeing any lift. You're not seeing any lift in ADR.
Attribution theft is real?
Sorry, Peter, as well as casual racism,
understand my point.
it's incredibly sarcastic.
My plan for high tech this year before it was canceled was I was going to wear a T-shirt that I'm getting made that just says #attribution theft is real, because a lot of vendors in this space steal your attribution and say that they'll claim credit for the bookings, even though they may be assisted a little bit, but they'll give themselves 100% credit.
And it's that smoke and mirrors. We before COVID hit, we were about to launch essentially a commission-based display product, and as part of that product launch, we did research on what was in the market, and some nameless companies 30-day normal view through attribution. 30 days. I can't remember what I did 5 days ago. Never mind a banner ad I saw 30 days ago.
100% credit for something that happened. But maybe the person didn't even click that. They just maybe saw it, or it loaded on a page.
Yeah, accidentally as they scrolled past the screen. And because no one talks about this, because nobody on property wants to say, yes, I've fallen for this for the last 5 years. And yeah, sorry, go on, Adele.
No, I was just going to say, hoteliers, please look at your total lift. If it's not there, cut it out and find something that is going to work for you. That's what you're looking for, right? That was the goal. The goal was not on paper. that you had more money, but in real life that you had more money.
And don't
And-
rely on the supplier to tell you how successful they are. It's in their interest to tell you they did
That's a
way
great
better.
point. You know, and I'm also concerned, you know, because people are saying, I don't have money to spend on marketing. I don't have money to spend on my renovation. I have all these bills I need to pay. I'm so behind on my bills, even though my hotel has been closed for all these months. And I really think that maybe we need to rethink any new contracts that we make, or maybe even renegotiate old contracts, because some contracts are based on, you know, $4 per room or $2 per room or whatever it is per room. Well, if you're in a 500 room hotel and you have 20% occupancy, I'm not sure that in that situation, that price model should have been in your contract. Maybe we should price per room occupied
Yeah.
or something. Something needs to be more fair, because they're getting the same money if they're getting paid. If they're getting paid, they're getting the same money month to month to month, even though the hotel is closed or 20%. That doesn't make any sense. I
Ruby,
think
if
we
you
need
have
to,
suppliers that aren't providing value right now, or less value because of the occupancy, and they haven't already come to you and said, "Here's what we're willing to do," you need new suppliers.
Mhm.
Good.
I've also seen where some of these suppliers are doing billing on services they're not even doing because
Yeah.
nobody's sitting in the chair on the other side of the phone.
But
That's
the
how
problem
bad.
is these suppliers are going to become they're going to double down on trying to make the numbers look good.
Yeah.
Because you've got
They
an
don't
already
do what- Yeah.
an already dishonest supplier who now has more to lose because there's less business in the market, who's really going to layer on the smoke and mirrors and not let you see behind the curtain.
And also,
So-
those are the suppliers who are going to be laying on the level of fear in terms of, you cancel your contract with us and you'll lose what little you have.
Right.
And, you know, one of the things we've heard a lot of people say about during COVID is, you know, just people are going to be deciding on the things they want to go back to. You know, it's almost like everyone's hit the reset button. It's the same for this, you know, suppliers re-looking at contracts, re-looking at the way we do things. You know, it's the perfect time to wipe that slate clean and go, right, what are we doing next?
And it also adds to a problem that is systemic in our industry, unfortunately, and that there are a lot of people that are in positions of decision making internally that don't know how the process is done. They don't know how these things function. They've relied upon their vendors to tell them what they're doing and how successful they are. And they've been left as the last man standing, and through cost factors have lost through force majeure, kicked out their third parties that were expensive, and cut away their internal teams that usually did the heavy lifting. And they're sitting in front of the keyboard going, know what it's supposed to do. You know, it reminds me of the old Star Trek movie where Scotty picks up the mouse and goes, "Computer." You know, it's like they don't know what to think of
Wait,
this.
how does he go, Lauren?
Oh,
I can't
God.
do
Not
Scottish
this
accent,
again.
bro.
Stu, I don't know if you were on the show like a couple of weeks ago when
It was
Lauren,
not
for like 5 minutes, insisted I did a Scottish accent for him.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me. I can't do Scottish well. But anyway, the idea of it is that internally they don't have an answer for it, so they're looking for a solution. Which brings me to a question, Peter. Do you think you'll have a training process with this, because you're literally giving keys to a spaceship, and either they're going to fly the spaceship or they're going to strike it on a rock to make a fire? You know, can you help those? There's some people that know what to do with it, and they're going to be proud to have the tool, and they're going to work it the way you planned it. And there's going to be people looking at it going, okay, what do I do with it? You know, and they won't know the best way to do the tool.
Oh yeah, no, we wouldn't give people the keys to the toolkit without showing them how to use it, because then invariably those are going to be your dissatisfied people who work it wrong and then come back and go, it's broken, and you go, well, what did you do? So no, built into the toolkit when people start is full guidance for exactly how to work through it, where to input things, how to do it. The other thing we've done is that, you know, the way it's designed is to guide people through it so that they can't go wrong. So the spreadsheet and the element of the toolkit, obviously it is a spreadsheet. I don't like calling it a spreadsheet because it's got so much depth to it. It's built in a way where you can only control certain things. And we haven't done that to be mean. We've done that to make sure that you only control the things you're supposed to control. Because if you delete certain things, it's not going to work. So, you know, it's almost like that thing. You only give access to the bits that people need access to. So, no, we have full guidance in there for how to utilize it. Exactly how you would expect. Yeah.
Melissa in the chat was keeping the conversation alive about the attribution theft is real and so forth. And she brought up an interesting article and statement to A/B testing the actual performance contribution of it, which is is brewing in that thought process, because all too often they just take single sample and say, that's it. That's what we're doing. Oh boy, we showed up when that popped up and we did that for you. And, we're in that attribution string. We also know, and without naming names, begins with a T, ends with an E, that they go over and they put themselves into the attribution string by hijacking the source and saying they're now the source as soon as they pop open.
They're not the only ones either. Yeah.
No, they're not the only. No, they're not the only.
On the show last week. If you're really not sure, if you're running display ads through whoever, right, and you're not sure what the actual contribution is, run either a blank ad or a dummy ad. Run something that isn't your brand as an A/B test in the system, and you'll see plain as day that they're over attributing. Everyone over attributes except for Ben and Phil. Obviously, everyone else does.
And I think that's the thing that comes out too. If it's good that we've got people on here who obviously do this for a living. But if there are hotels out there who are thinking this sounds amazing, but I don't understand all of this, then get one of these guys in. Get it. Find a digital company. Get someone that can come in and help you. Otherwise, if you're lost, then you're only going to get more lost. So that's it's always. Sometimes it's hard to ask for help and bring people in, but again, it's that return on investment. It's like you spend your dollar pound wisely, then you're going to see a return. So
I'd also like to run. Stuart, sorry, yeah, hey, we're almost coming up to 2 hours. Gee golly, sorry, Stuart Peter. We said, hey, show for about a half hour. We'll have some laughs. Stuart, if people want to know more about you and the Amazing Field Travel, actually the amazing Melissa and Field Travel and the podcast you guys, the award-winning podcast that you do. Where is it they can find you, sir?
So fueltravel.com is the mothership. You can learn about the podcast there, the COVID studies. We've done 10 of those so far, and we'll do some more in the future. We're taking a little break right now to let our list unfatigue a little bit because we've been hitting them hard. We've had over 60,000 total survey responses now. It's probably, as far as I know, it's the most comprehensive sentiment study that's been done during COVID. But if you're interested in mobile app technology, digital key technology, CRM, booking engines, we got you covered. We do all that software with service as well. We don't just set it and forget it. We handhold you through it, and we will run it for you if you don't have the time. So fueltravel.com or fueltravel.com/podcast. In today's episode, we're getting ready to record. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix.
Oh yeah, I heard that was excellent.
It's scary, is what it is. It's a bunch of ex-Google, Twitter, Pinterest, other big social media company executives that have left the industry because of the fears of what it's doing to us as a society. So go watch it. It'll inform you. It'll hopefully make you make slightly smarter decisions about your life and for your kids. And we're going to be dissecting that in today's episode. So that'll be published next week.
Sweet.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys. A pleasure.
Cheers, Stuart.
Really
Thank you, buddy.
Cheers, Stuart.
Thanks for your
I
time.
got to run to a meeting, but it was great to be here and so nice to meet you, Peter.
Likewise, Adele.
Please tell us more about what you're doing, where to find you.
I am the founder of Aspire Reputation Marketing. I have been spending the last 20 years coaching hoteliers how to have phenomenal 5-star review success. 96.1% guest satisfaction sound good to you? That's what we were able to achieve, outshining the competition. And you know what? Somebody, I don't even know who said it, but I heard somebody say yesterday that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it's really working on your culture of pleasing guests and that inspires 5-star reviews. And I love this work. It has been my passion for 20 years. And now I'm having so much fun sharing it with other hoteliers. So find me at aspirereputationmarketing.com or link in with me, please.
Adele, I'm sorry, but the hotels you're running in New York, what are the rankings in TripAdvisor? I tend to forget that.
Like #1 hotel in the world on TripAdvisor out of 1.1 million accommodations. The Aria Hotel Budapest was the #1 hotel in the world. And in New York, we had 10 years ago, #1, #2, #3, #4, all 4 hotels in a row, right on the top of, more than 400 hotels. And even today, even though we've been closed for so long, the Library Hotel Collection has kept 3 hotels in the top 4. So it's pretty amazing.
It clearly
Actually,
works.
even we're surprised.
Yeah, so you have
It
no idea what
works.
you're talking about. Basically, you're just kind of making this stuff up as you go. Just,
It's a system, and it works so well if you work the system. If you're coachable, I'd love to coach you.
excellent, Adele. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adele.
Adele,
to
you
meet
go.
you.
You go. I'm going to hype you up after you go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I can count on you, Ben.
All right then. Have a great weekend. So, I am going to hype Adele up. I've just dropped something into the chat. It's a YouTube video. Rupesh Patel did a piece with Adele a couple of days ago, and that's a recording. Well worth watching. Well worth watching. People are genuinely. I think people don't give. I don't think people recognize the benefit of any moment spent with Adele as much as they should. She is pure gold in her advice, and I said it before. It's accessible. It doesn't make you feel stupid. Whenever she says something to me, I don't feel stupid. I sort of feel like I've had my eyes gently opened, rather than been made to look upon my own idiocy. So if anybody gets a chance to watch that, it's definitely something I'd recommend. The YouTube link is in the chat.
Yeah. And go back to a little bit of history that involves Fran as well. Adele was on the Digital Marketing Council. When I was on the Digital Marketing Council, Fran was an integral part of all of that as we were going through this. So the bonds that we created through those dialogues, I remember when Adele was first doing what she was doing, and I dismissed it as just leveraging TripAdvisor. Like, yeah, okay, And then very quickly I realized it has nothing to do with whether you're sending people that were happy a link that they could give a positive, and people that were unhappy, you sent them this is not it. This is cultural development. As she said, culture eats strategy every day. She was the Pied Piper of this before anybody realized that TripAdvisors and all consumer sentiment feedback was really a litmus test of what are you doing as a culture for hospitality. She was the one that brought this to market. She's the one that made people aware of the fact that the result is the scorings you get, not the end. That's not the purpose of the product. And she had been doing that so successfully, as we said, with the hotels that she was involved with directly for so many years. And that's where, again, to Ben's point, it's just gold to listen to her, because there's no pretense to it. It's all about really, truly understanding that hospitality is the art of the serving, the heart of the servant. What can I do for you? How can I help you? And Peter, you brought it eloquently at first. We don't say no. We say, let's see what I can do. And she epitomizes that in the cultural development. So yeah,
she is the Pied Piper of positivity.
Yeah, that is true. That's true. We are actually at the 2-hour mark. This was boring and not much interest, and
this is the great part, Peter, because you and I can go have a drink now.
I was just thinking exactly the same. Yeah.
Whereas for these guys,
we got a whole rest of the day to work before we do that.
Correct.
Well, the thing is, they can have a drink, but it's frowned upon for them at this time of day.
Probably, but with what America's going through, I could probably forgive you a drink at this time.
The only way you don't have a hangover is to never get sober. It's kind of a motto. With that in mind, I guess we should start with Dean. Mr. Dean, if people want to know more about you and where it is that they can find you, where can they do all that?
Sure. You can go to my websites at basecampmeta.com or metasearchmarketing.com to learn more about what we're doing, creating educational series to help educate people on metasearch, for one, and also working on programs to help even the small hotel get involved in metasearch. That's been difficult, even prohibitive in the past, just because of a lot of barriers you have as a small hotel that's not a part of a Marriott, for example, or whatever. And we have found ways to overcome those, and we can help you with that.
Well, first off, when you say we, is that because it's me, myself, and I, or because when you're the one that created this? Self-I says, shut up, let him talk. No, I don't.
I talk to myself, my dog over here a lot, but actually, I do have folks on board that are coming in to help spur that along a little bit. So more to be disclosed on that in the near future.
I hope so. We're actually going to have to focus on that on one of the live shows to really break it down for people to understand the real impact of any size hotel being able to step into the Google, which is the 800-pound gorilla when it comes to this right now, and be able to be on that platform regardless of your size, because it has been so prohibitive, as you pointed out, with so many hotels that didn't feel they had the scale to bring it to market, or the thought that the cost was prohibitive. So we definitely got to put that in the forefront and talk more about it in the future when you get that laid out the way you want to talk about it. So, Mr. Ben, your cohort in crime, Tris, drunken stupor? What? I mean, just where's he at?
He's taking his daughter to goalkeeping trials. So nowhere near as fun
when he does the family thing.
as a
Damn it.
drunken student. You can't really, you feel like an ass for
Yeah,
sort
you
of
know.
saying, you're not here. How dare you be a family man?
Hard to think of
Pick up next week.
So 3 and 6. Besides taking over the world on a daily basis, what else is going on?
3 and 6 digital without dishonesty. Is it's the keystone of the agency and the team we run. If I say I've made you X, I've made you X. It's a full service marketing agency. We're about to launch a couple of really new, really interesting design websites for a couple of clients. So that'll be really interesting to see how they go down and whether or not everyone loves the way I design things.
Modesty.
Modesty. No, a couple of really interesting pieces of software as well in the pipeline. Something that I worked on at our previous agency, Expanded, which is about live pricing information being put into paid search ads. We're now able to offer that to any CRS and any PMS. So really excited to get that into the marketplace as soon as possible.
You know, I'm front in line on that one. You know, I'm going to call my chips in. I'm pushing everything forward and say, please, 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 going to have that. So,
for you, Lauren, anything.
Oh, sweet dog.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, anything. Lauren, what about yourself? Where can people find you on the internet?
Well, I was going to let them go over and do the final finale to it, but if you want to show them shows,
no, it's fine. Let the guests go first. Good call.
You know, just saying, Fran. You know, other than the fact that you are bringing your massive skill sets and insights and capabilities to the open market these days by not only with Peter with team, but other things other than that, where can people find you should they want to go over and reach out to you and know a little bit more?
Well, you can find me at fbrasso@gmail.com, and I don't have a website. I'm not sure I'm going to do one or what I'm going to do with that, but right now I'm doing consulting work with Russell Partnership and a couple of other things to be coming up soon. But my key point of being here is longtime friend of Lauren Gray. So I'm
have a drink.
on that now. We met actually doing a hotel simulation program years. Oh my God, I don't even know how many years. 15 years ago at Lynn University, and we would tell you honestly, and we do tell honestly, we didn't like each other at all. He wanted to make all the decisions, and I thought all his decisions were wrong.
To think that, right?
And the outcomes were much better when we worked together, and that's how we started having a drink together to figure out why we were at the bottom of every competitive set analysis that was done on that day with hotel simulation. So we ended up at the top, and that's only because we worked together and been in love ever since. So that's great.
That's the absolute truth. It was it was hated first sight and love forever after that. It was.
That's what
something from that. Did I say that?
Well, I felt I was right. The first day, we were going to do it my way, damn it. And I was the one in control of the computer. And we were on the bottom of the list. We were the worst performing group out of all the groups. So then the next day, Fran's like, she's going to do it her way. And I'm like, fine, go ahead. And we were the worst of all the groups. And I'm like, see? And then we went out at the end of the day because we both don't like losing. And we started drinking. And we're like, well, heck, kind of some of the stuff you did was good. So we're like, well, let's work together. So once we came to terms with, well, you're not so bad. Okay, well, you're not so bad. So anyway, we decided to collaborate, and this was a cumulative score, mind you. So for 2 out of the 3 days, we sucked. And the third day, we kicked everybody else's butt. We beat everybody cumulatively by our score on the third day by working together. So that's when it turned to love it from that point forward. Like, yeah, we rock. So the rest is history. Peter, please.
Collaboration is a big part of what we both preach.
Yes, definitely that for that. Peter, thank you very much for taking the time today. Obviously, and Fran as well, please. And it just and going through and taking, I mean, what was more than just a half-hour dialogue, 2 hours of going back and forth and roundabout. But kudos and congratulations on the product that you built and the future tense of it and all that, and the roadmap that you have. I think it's going to be incredibly valuable for people to find out more about you, the product itself. Where is it they can go, and how can they reach out to you should they have more questions?
Yeah, sure. So for the toolkit, find the website at hotel-forecast.com. For the company, find us at russellpartnership.com. cohost.com. And then please do connect with me on LinkedIn. If you search Peter Russell and Russell Partnership, then I'll come up right at the top.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Really, most of the questions that do pop up on different platforms, we were already dialoguing, so I didn't feel like we needed to interrupt it by saying something. But thank you those for the questions that came up, and we already shared some of the links for that. So I think we addressed most of what was brought up in other channels for that. Thank you all that did follow us on the different channels. We'll be rebroadcasting this show again on different time zones that are conducive. For instance, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Sydney time for the APAC group, and then of course 11:30 Wednesday for those people who live on a small island in the Atlantic Ocean in London time. Just so that, yeah, there you go.
Thank you for hosting, Lauren. We appreciate it.
Oh, no, it's been a real absolute pleasure. Again, thank you for all previous episodes, including this one. You can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. For this show, you can look for show number 270. There will be a podcast I'll be doing that will do a brief recap of some of the highlights from today's show as well, in case you don't have 2 hours to listen to us. There'll be a little recap, but that'll be a little bit more abbreviated. We will have next week's show. We do have another co-host with us next week that I think Ed is bringing, but I want to get confirmation before I make the announcement, so we'll see that in an email soon. But Peter, you're always more than welcome to join us, friend. Obviously, whenever you guys have the time that you can break off and join us, we'd love to have you jump on the show whenever you feel comfortable. It's been a real pleasure to have you as well, Ben.
Thank you for the invite, and I'm here. I'll be back to support you, Ben. Let me know when they're giving you a hard time, and I'll be back.
I appreciate it, mate. You give me my Hail Mary pass.
That's it. Absolutely.
Yeah, indeed, thank you, and then thank you for your Super 8 shirt too, by the way, as Ed pointed out. So with that, thank you, everyone. We will see everyone next Friday, 11:30 Eastern U.S. Time, for show number 271. Until then,
Great weekend,
we'll
guys.
see everyone later.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Thank you all. Bye. Bye.